So yeah, what is good navigation to you? Again, just pop in chat. If what do you think it means by good navigation? I mean, to me, this means basically finding the tools, the apps, and the files that kind of help me do my job. There's a lot of time when I spend. Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier, I spend an awful lot of time going and finding resources, files, apps, solutions that we might have built. They're just in crazy weird places. I know that our file structure is never really up to scratch the way I'd like it to be. But it's something that we kind of we kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, good navigation basically prevents me and others with a picture of what's available. But navigation isn't just about building an A to B bridge. It's about building a seamless journey that makes sense to your team, giving them the ability to find the resources that they actually need. And one of the other drawbacks that I've seen and heard about when building intranets as well is the entire adoption process. So how do you actually get the staff to use your intranet? And this plays into this a little bit. So if the process is of finding what they need is easy and efficient, then they will use it. And this kind of goes back to something that Jerry mentioned on one of his on his session going back, I think about 4 weeks ago now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that is that designing intranets and building intranets isn't just about one person taking everything that they think they know and kind of just building on top of it and chucking it out there. It's about getting your team on board with the entire kind of development and design process of your intranet. And yeah, with that in mind, I mean, there's 3 things that I usually try to think of when thinking about navigation, and this is basically 3 questions that you should ask yourself when deciding how to implement and where things should go inside of your navigation structure. And that is, where are you currently? So whereabouts am I at the moment? I mean, at the moment I'm on a demo site, so I haven't really got any information on this page to actually show. But let's say, for example, that I am on a learning portal. That is where I am currently. So the next thing you want to think about is, well, what can I actually do here? So if I'm on a learning portal, I might be thinking, okay, I can take courses and I can take company training. But what's important is where you actually want to be able to go next, or where can you go next? And again, just using that as an example, if I'm on a learning portal site and I can take courses and training, the next thing I might want to do is I might want to go and take a look at the Microsoft exams, maybe to keep my knowledge and my skills up to date so I can deliver more courses and stuff for you guys. It's kind of just building that natural journey between a kind of starting point, a starting location, and an end location as well. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into SharePoint, and I'm going to show you a few of the different areas where you can start building out navigation. So I just want to point out before we do get started, there is a difference in the way that navigation is kind of presented to your users between a team site and a communication site. And I'll touch on both as we go into these. So here you can see at the moment I'm on a team site, and we have probably the most basic form of navigation here, and that is this kind of left-hand navigation that we have on the side here. So who here is familiar with that left-hand navigation? Again, just pop a yes in chat if you've seen or used it before. So the other place that we have is on a communication site. So I can't get my words out today. And this is where it's presented slightly differently. So this is a communication site, and on here we have navigation up at the top. At the top here, and this is essentially the same navigation that you would have on a team site. It's just presented in a slightly different way. And one drawback to having a communication site is you can't place your navigation down the left-hand side. You can only do vertical and horizontal navigation on a team site. So just bear that in mind. Horizontal navigation is only available on a communication site. But on a communication site, we also have navigation at the bottom, and now this looks very bland and blank at the moment, but this is what we call our footer down here. And again, we can edit the things that we put in here down at the bottom as well. But the one thing that I want to kind of just point out as well is that the process between building navigation for a SharePoint site is very similar to the process that web developers will go through when building a website. You're thinking about the journey, you're thinking about the things and the places, the questions people might ask, to be able to navigate them to the correct places. And a good example of this is, again, what we try to do all of the time over our main Collab 365 site is we try to provide you with navigation that makes sense to the journey that you're on. So, for example, when we have new members joining the academy, they join for our main site and they can see a list of all the products that they have there. We have a section for frequently asked questions because we know that people ask questions before they go to the site. So we're presenting them with all of the information that they need in the relevant places that's relevant to the journey that they're on. And we're going to try, when we think about SharePoint sites and SharePoint navigation, we're trying to accomplish the same thing. The journey and the story might be different, but essentially we're trying to get them from one place to another in the most simple and most efficient way that we can.
Yeah, I think a few people just echoing Connor that the team site has that flexibility of horizontal and vertical. The communication site doesn't. And also Sydney reflecting the purpose behind the two different sites might lead you to different solutions. And back to what you said there around supporting the journey. Yes, there's some best practice, but if you just do that, you're probably going to get people lost. So I think it's quite an important. Certainly when I listened to you the first time on this, that's quite an important learning point, is that conversation with the people that are going to be using those sites is going to help you build a better site.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, like, I just again want to just reiterate, it's important that you get your team on board before you define your navigation, because it's ultimately, like I say, it's going to be them that's going to be using it. It's going to be them that want to find or need to find the resources that they use on a day-to-day basis. It's all well and good one person trying to think about the journey, but until the people that are actually taking that journey use the site, you don't really know for sure. So yeah, like I say, it's important to get everybody that's going to be using your intranet involved in this process. So yeah, let's take a look at some of the different navigation options that are available to us. Now, I think I'm going to build this inside of my communication site, but again, I'll show you where the options are for the team site as well. So we have navigation up at the top here. This is known as horizontal navigation. And if we hit this little edit button here, what we can see is we get a little pop-up on the left-hand side. Now, this is exactly the same for a team site with vertical navigation. On a team site, again, we just hit the edit button. You get a similar sort of pop out on the left-hand side. I know George mentioned about finding resources and documents and things that are relevant to you. And this is where this site navigation audience targeting comes into play a little bit more. However, just bear in mind that this is more on a department level, more so than a per user level. So when you do enable this and the navigation audience targeting does kick in, it's looking more specifically at the department you're in, the roles that you have within your organization as well, more so than John specifically uses X file and that's all he uses type of thing, and that's all we're going to show. So again, it's more tailored towards your actual team itself than an individual person when you enable this. But we're not going to dive too much into that. We're going to look at again just some of the kind of visual options and the setting up options of navigation. So like I say, on team site, again, when we click the edit, it appears down here on the left. I'm going to go back to my communication site, and again, we can see exactly the same edit navigation panel that pops out here on the side. So just using my example then of thinking about, for example, that journey that I kind of pitched at the beginning, that was I'm in a learning portal. Let's call this a learning portal for now, and perhaps I might be able to take courses on here. I could take company training, and I might want to go and view perhaps some other courses that may exist, or some links to some other areas or regions that might make sense to the journey that somebody might be at when they're at this learning portal. So I'm going to use that as my example as I kind of go through this. So on the left hand side, we can do a number of things. So you can see that here that we've got a bunch of labels, if you like, that are representing the labels that you see up at the top here: home, documents, pages, and site contents. And we have that here, and you can change these until your heart's content. You can change these up, you can rename them, you can delete, you can add new things in here as well, which we'll get to. But we can also reorder these as well. So on the left-hand side of your label, you can drag these around. You can see I've actually just dragged that into as a sublink, if you like. But I can actually drag these in and around my my navigation, and when I save this, that will update here, so you can set the ordering of your navigation as well. What we also have is an ellipsis next to these that actually exist. And if you can see here, you can also move these down or up, you can remove them, and you can also edit them. So let's go take a look at what the edit looks like. So when we edit this home link here, you can see that this is a link. It's given us an address here. And one thing that's pretty good about SharePoint is you don't need to put the entire SharePoint URL in. You can just put the everything after the first /, and that will work as a link when we create links and changing links. And then we also have a label here, which is obviously the label that gets shown to the user, which is home. The other option here is we can open this in a new tab, and this again is something that you might want to enable, especially if your intranet is somewhere where people are spending a lot of time and they're flicking between different links, between different documents. It just makes the whole process of being able to return to where you originally were much easier by enabling the open in a new tab. Otherwise, you've got to click back through your browser a bunch of times, depending on where you might have gone from that link in the first place. So I'm just going to cancel out of that, and we'll show you where you can start adding links or adding extra options for your navigation. So if you highlight or just kind of move your mouse between the gaps or at the bottom of these labels or links here, you see a little plus icon. And when I click that, it's giving me the option to add a new menu item. And I'm not going to say link, I'm going to say a new menu item to your list. And in a communication site, we have two different options. We have a link and we have a label. Now, a label is essentially, it's kind of a way to categorize your links. It's a non-clickable text label, if you like, similar to what you would have inside of Power Apps by default. It's a piece of text that doesn't do anything. However, we can use it to kind of highlight different categories, subcategories maybe that you might want inside of your site. If we just quickly pop back over to the team site, we do get some slightly different options here. When I click the plus icon here, we have a few more options here. We have obviously the link and label, which exists in a communication site, but we can also create new conversations, calendars, notebooks, and planner boards as well, which will all be linked to this site when we create them as well. So again, that's bringing out the benefits of having a team site. So again, the similar sort of way that you would have inside of Microsoft Teams, where you can kind of apply things like OneNote. I think they got rid of Wiki, didn't they? Yeah, you can apply things like OneNote to your kind of team site. It's the same way that sort of exists here, and you can add that to your navigation here on the left. But I'm going to head back over to the communication site, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to define some very simple navigation menu options inside of here, and I'm going to again using that kind of template idea that I had of having the learning portal. I might want to go to maybe various different categories of courses that might be available within my learning portal. Now I know that I'm not going to be building my learning portal directly here in SharePoint just for the sake of speed, so I will link off to some other places. So yeah, I'm going to start with a label. And you can see when I select label, the address gets kind of grayed out because obviously this isn't a clickable item. It's just a label inside of our navigation. So I'm going to say that again, just following the kind of academy style that we go for. We have categories for things like Power Apps. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. We'll add that. We'll go ahead and add a label for Power Automate. And we'll also go and add a label for Power BI as well. So these are kind of three kind of fundamental Power Platform services that we offer training for. And I'll go and press OK. Now, if I press save, you can see that these still look clickable because essentially this is designed to bring out what is called a sub-menu. So at the moment, obviously, there's nothing tied into these, which means that they're not actually clickable, but we do get that kind of hyperlink style mouse and color outline when we highlight over these, but nothing actually happens. So what you can do with these, if I go back in and edit, is we can apply links or even further subcategories or sublabels, if you like, into these labels. And again, it depends how kind of diverse and dynamic you want to go into the structure of your navigation. But again, it's about keeping it simple and keeping it as efficient as you can for people to find what they need. So I wouldn't advise going more than kind of two subcategories deep. Otherwise, you end up with almost a kind of insane folder process going on where people just find it incredibly difficult to find the resources they want. So what I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and add a new link in here. Now, just for the purpose of speed, I'm just going to quickly just pop a link in here. I'm just going to go to Google just for speed. We're going to say that this is just the iPad. We'll call this the Jumpstart challenge. And something like this, because it's a link, and obviously I'm stepping away from SharePoint here. I'd probably want to open in a new tab, and again, that just keeps the kind of ability to come back from where you kind of left the site intact. You don't lose that, and it just opens up in a new page for you. So we'll enable that. And then what I'll do here is I'm actually just going to drag this into one of my categories, because if I click save at the moment, what you see is we just end up with a link that appears on our site and it goes to Google, which is not what we want. So I'm going to click edit. And what I can do is I can drag, using the little icon on the left, I can drag this Jumpstart Challenge link into any one of my labels. So I'm going to drag this into Power Apps, and you can see that the indentation here has just moved that Jumpstart Challenge into the subcategory of Power Apps. So I'm going to go click save, and you can see now that we have a little drop down here, which has taken us to that Jumpstart Challenge. And again, that takes us to obviously Google. I've not gone to the effort of setting this up entirely. And my phone's trying to talk to me. So let's go back and have a look at some other options. So our navigation at the top, let's have a look at what we can actually do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and click the little settings cog on the right hand side. And then if I come down to change the look, you can see that we get given options for theme, header, navigation, and footer. So these are some options that we had a look at 2 weeks ago when we were looking at the layouts phase. But we're specifically going to go into navigation and take a look at navigation. So you can see at the moment that site navigation visibility is on. We can turn that off as well if we just want a kind of single page site, which can be useful. But again, we're not going to be able to see the effects of what we've done if we don't turn that on. So I'm going to keep that on. And we can see that we have two different menu styles. We've got mega menu and cascading. So mega menu is currently enabled at the moment. I think the default is cascading, and I'll show you what that looks like. If I change that to cascading, essentially what we have is a different style of drop down, and it'll probably make more sense if I was to add some more links into here. So I'll quickly go ahead and do that. I'll just call this one step up. And we'll just pop Google in there at the moment. Go ahead and add the Pathfinder as well. And we're just going to add a couple of test ones just so I can show you how this looks. So just created a bunch of other links here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag these into some of the folders. Sorry, some of the parent labels, if you like. We'll go pop that one into there as well. And we'll hit save. So what we have now is a concatenated menu with a cascading menu with a bunch of different items in. And you can see how they appear underneath as links. And again, if we added them sublabels, we would be able to kind of go off sideways as well into kind of multiple steps of this drop down. So one of the common things that people ask as well is, why should I use cascading over the mega menu? And I mean, for me, one of the kind of big telltale signs is if you've got hundreds of items inside of, for example, one of your labels, then that tells me that you should be using cascading, because you can fit more in there. It makes things a lot easier to kind of see as well, because you're not kind of presented with this, well, it's exactly what it says on the tin, this mega menu. But yeah, if you've got hundreds of items, then I would say cascading. I mean, the other thing as well is if you've got hundreds of items, then you're probably doing something wrong in your navigation anyway.
It's interesting, isn't it, Connor? You've touched on that point of designing for the user need. It very much depends on the data or the locations you're trying to expose, but you're lifting up the lid to these different options with visual cues to make that idea of navigation a bit easier.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly,
I like that. Yeah. Sorry, I cut into your demo there.
No, it's great. So yeah, that's obviously what cascaded navigation looks like. So what does, for example, the mega menu look like? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and change the look of this, and we'll go to navigation. If I switch this over to mega menu and press save, you can see here at the moment that we have, for example, these are split out into two sections, and I should probably give these a few headings as well, which again I can do. And this is where that kind of subheading kind of comes in a little bit useful. So what I'll do is I'm just going to create a new label, and I'm just going to call this subheading 1 for now. And we'll call the second label subheading 2. Again, make that a label. And then we'll just drag this into Power Apps. And then we can drag our 2 links into that subheading. Again, we can do the same for, in fact, we'll do this over in the Power Apps one as well. We'll just go and drag these in there for the sake of argument's sake, and press save. So now what you have is you have subheading labels with various links inside. So again, you can't click on these subheadings, but it allows you to kind of paint the picture a little bit clearer. So this is going to be useful if you've got kind of maybe 3 or 4 subheadings with a few various links in here as well. One thing it does do, I believe, after 3 columns, it will concatenate the 4th one below the first one here as well. So you get kind of a nice streamlined navigation as well. So that's basically the difference between cascading and mega menus. So I just want to kind of highlight on my team site some of the differences there as well. So this is over on my team site. I'll do the same thing. I'll come to the settings cog. We'll select change the look, and we'll go to navigation. And you can see here that we've got 2 different options here. Unlike a communication site, we can add horizontal navigation and vertical navigation as well. So yeah, that's how you would kind of go about implementing your navigation in terms of the kind of root area where people usually look at for their menu items, their menu options. Some other options that you do have on a communication site, which I mentioned, is via the footer as well. I don't know if you can see this down here, but there's a little edit button. If I select that, we can also do the same thing. We can add links and labels into our footer as well. So again, I could just go ahead and we'll add another link in here. And we could say this might be a quick link to Google. You might typically have some things like I don't know, report an issue, submit a request type of thing. That's some of the common things that you'll see in footers. But again, that will appear down here as a kind of horizontal footer link section as well. And again, all the links will work as they're intended to do.
There's something there, Connor, that you've just kind of reminded me of, and I don't know whether you'll have even just a couple of seconds just to dip into it, but you've shown the navigation tooling that you've got on the site, but people often use the site itself to help navigation, I believe, or it's certainly something I've seen very commonly, is that navigation for quick links in the site. And also, I think it was Paul Walsh that said he tries to make his intranets kind of a digital crossroads for people. So he actually puts boxes into the page which go to locations. Very visual, very kind of easy to find. I think Sydney also mentioned the hero section sometimes is used for navigation. So you're not just limited, are you, to those kind of those 2 band or 3 bands if you include the footer?
Yeah, exactly that. So again, just for those that don't know what hero section is, this is essentially a hero section up on our screen, and this is what we call a web part inside of SharePoint. You can make these hero sections work quite dynamically and automatically update, for example, when news items maybe get added to SharePoint and all that sort of stuff. But you can make these kind of static locations as well. So let's say, for example, let's say this learn about your communication site button here. I could turn this into a kind of almost like a one-stop shop location that goes to a specific web page. Let's say I wanted to make this go to my academy. What I would do is essentially just edit the page entirely. You can see now that we're in the edit view that we showed 2 weeks ago. And I can select inside of any of these boxes. And you can see that we get given the controls that we can edit these. And I can choose exactly where this goes as well. So I can change this link. What's really cool is I can point to any of my resources that exist that I've recently accessed. I can go to a specific link similarly to the way that we've just shown in the navigation. I can upload specific files here as well. I can also take you to various elements of my actual site itself as well. So say, for example, I have a news feed inside of my site that'll all appear here as well under the category. So obviously that's kind of the basics of a hero section, and again, you can make these quite dynamic. You can change things like images as well. You can change background images for these if you want to really kind of keep things on brand and on theme. But one of the other things you mentioned there as well was the kind of quick link section as well. Now, again, there's many different options for quick links, but again, I'm just going to go ahead and add a web part, which I showed you the other week, and we can do a search for quick links. And again, there's multiple ways that you can display this. I mean, this is on a communication site with a kind of single column layout, which means that it's going to place this directly in the center of my single column. But if I was to do this, for example, on a team site, you can do things like adding it to the right hand side, which kind of gets rid of most of the white space as well, which I won't go into again today. However, let's go have a look at the quick links web part. So obviously, yeah, you can rename your quick links. You can maybe call this something like common resources. Which again is a useful use case for quick links, is to perhaps access specific documents that might be accessed on a regular basis. Saves having to go find them inside of OneDrive and your entire kind of SharePoint site library of documents, which I know that I've spent enough time doing to know that that's a big problem. Yeah, John, why aren't you using this for me? John often sends me
I've even
links
just
for
said it.
things.
It really draws my eye. Like most common places to go, we just have so many most common places, Connor. It's our problem. It's our data hierarchy. It's nothing to do with my inconsistency. No, it's definitely not that.
But yeah, I mean, let's say, for example, John has a bunch of documents which he sends me on a regular basis because I'm always asking him. He could place them in somewhere like this. And again, if this is useful to perhaps a team as well, where your team is going to be accessing the same documents, it makes sense to have it here rather than kind of privately between a chat inside of Teams like we currently have. But it's as simple as just adding a link. And again, you get given the same options that we just had inside of the hero section as well. So you can link to things like site contents, you can link to things like documents, you can go externally if there's a regular website that you might visit. I know that we're often me specifically, often in YouTube looking at analytics. It'd be useful to have that here. And also that kind of removes the need for me to have this kind of huge bookmarks bar that I have at the top to find all of my day-to-day business as usual things that I get up to as well. So I mean, yeah, very very handy to have. But like John mentioned as well, there's ways of customizing this. So if we click edit web part, we can change the way that our quick links works. We can add things like film strip, which is I believe the same style that they use on the office.com homepage for showing you the recent files that you've worked on. So that sort of layout, you've got things like grid, button view, list view. I know that I've not got anything in here at the moment, but tiles again is quite a useful one, as you can add. I believe tiles and film strips you can add background images to as well. Again, that can all be changed from this little drop down here, if you didn't want to go into this. But yeah, just on that audience targeting thing, those options are available inside of these web parts as well, in both the hero and the quick links section.
I think, have you got time for I know there's one other final little visual cue, Connor, you had up your sleeve, didn't you, with the emojis? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, so this is one
just because you like emojis, really. It's an emoji fest.
Well, it's one that kind of it's such a small detail, but it helps so much. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows, but there is a stat, and I can't remember what the stat is, but I know that there is a percentage of our brain that focuses more on images than it does on text. And I saw this on one of Jerry's demos that he was sharing with us a couple of weeks ago when he did the session. I was like, oh, how does he actually do that? Because I couldn't find any options for this. I will quickly show you. I'm just going to republish this, and in fact, we'll do it on the team site. And that was that he had icons against all of his navigation items, and I thought that was a really kind of nice, cool touch. It kind of breaks things up with a little bit of color, breaks things up with just kind of seeing a sea of text. And the typical thing that you'd look at is you'd go edit and you'd go, oh, how do I add an icon to this? There's no option to add icons. And then I realized that there's a shortcut, and it's the Windows key and period key, or Windows key and full stop key. And what it does is it brings up an emoji keyboard for you. And there's tons of emojis that are built into a Windows device. I know they get displayed very slightly differently depending on what device it's being consumed on. We've seen that inside of the Academy, because we do the same thing inside of our Academy menu on the left hand side that you guys have probably seen. We use emojis for various things on there. But if you bring up Windows key full stop, it allows you to search for some emojis. I can search for a graduation cap. That makes sense for the training link that I have here, and I can add that in with a little space, press OK, and then you got a little icon against that label. So when I press save now, and you can imagine how this would look quite nice with emojis and various different emojis against your items.
It's those little kind of 1-2% differences. Also, yeah. So somebody's also saying it may be like there may be language specific short keys, Windows plus, and that looks like a semicolon. But those 1 or 2% differences where you draw the eye to the place that people, perhaps most need to or most want to get to, that can really help, Connor, that little tip there. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, so is that what you have for us today on navigation, or is there anything else you would like to share?
I believe that's everything. And I think just to kind of reiterate again, I mean, obviously I've showed you the tools that are available to you, but again, just going back to the process of, I mean, I was just defining a real simple structure that might work for me, for example, in a learning portal. But again, it's about bringing your team on board, finding out what their use cases are, finding out what their daily activities might be, to be able to kind of define that navigation a little bit more clearer for them.
Yeah. And I think with those tools as well, you said there. So, I mean, thank you, Connor, for showing us all of that. I know it sort of might to some seem very rudimentary pieces, but when you start to look at this as a picture and you overlay it with that conversation with the team, you're starting to unlock some quite comprehensive strategies that you can build without too much complexity, really. These are all things you can point and click, right? And you're kind of really starting to deal with some of the issues we've seen in chat around over-reliance potentially on folders and specific links because we can expose them in the right places, or poor user experience because we can align our user experience and use the same kinds of menus across our sites. And that idea of inconsistent navigation, you've shown us a few things there which can help just streamline it and make it more familiar. So thank you for that. Yeah, and we really hope that you found some valuable tips in there. Do in chat if you have other tips around navigation or other perspectives on what navigation means to you. Please do share, because we've already seen in the chat today some talk about search, which I think is a really important topic that complements navigation, as does data structure and data hierarchy. They both kind of live together in this same space. So yeah, we really hope you found that useful and you continue to share.